Have you ever wondered why BMW's first supercar was built by their biggest rival? Most people think BMW has always been about precision engineering and doing everything in-house. But if you thought BMW's M division started with modified sedans, you're wrong. What you didn't know is that BMW once partnered with Lamborghini to create a mid-engine monster that would change everything. In the next few minutes, you'll discover 20 weird facts about the 1979 BMW M1 that even die-hard BMW fans don't know, including one fact that explains why this car nearly bankrupted two legendary companies at the same time. The M1 was BMW's very first mid-engine production car. This wasn't just any BMW. It was the company's radical departure from everything they'd built before. While BMW had been making front-engine sedans and coupes for decades, the M1 put the engine behind the driver for the first time in a production BMW. The 3.5-liter inline-six sat right behind the cabin, making this more Italian supercar than German luxury sedan. What's wild is that BMW engineers had to completely rethink their approach to weight distribution, cooling, and chassis dynamics. The engine bay was so tight that mechanics needed special tools just to change the spark plugs. This mid-engine layout gave the M1 a nearly perfect 50-50 weight distribution, something BMW would obsess over in future models. The company learned so much from this experiment that it influenced every performance BMW that came after, even though they never built another mid-engine road car. It was the first car to wear an official M badge. Before the M1, there was no BMW M division as we know it today. BMW Motorsport existed, sure, but they were focused on race cars and engine development, not road cars with M badges. The M1 changed everything by being the first production car to officially carry that now legendary M designation. This wasn't just a badge. It represented a whole new philosophy at BMW. The M stood for motorsport, and this car had to live up to that racing pedigree on both road and track. Engineers from BMW's racing department were directly involved in every aspect of development. The M badge on the M1 meant something special. This was a no-compromise performance machine, not just a souped-up sedan. That single letter would go on to become one of the most valuable badges in automotive history. But it all started here with this wedge-shaped supercar that looked nothing like any BMW before it. It was conceived as a homologation special for Group 4, and Group 5 racing the M1 wasn't born from a desire to build a supercar. It existed because BMW needed a race car. Group 4 and Group 5 racing regulations required manufacturers to build at least 400 road-going versions of their race cars. BMW wanted to compete with Porsche's dominant 935 in Group 5, and they needed something radical. The rules were specific. The car had to be a production model available to customers, not just a race car with license plates. This meant BMW had to engineer a car that could win at Le Mans on Saturday and drive to the grocery store on Monday. Every single M1 was essentially a detuned race car, which explains why they were so expensive and impractical. The homologation requirement forced BMW to think like a supercar manufacturer for the first time, competing directly with Ferrari and Lamborghini in showrooms as well as on track. Lamborghini was originally contracted to build it. Here's where the story gets really weird. BMW didn't have the expertise or facilities to build a mid-engine supercar, so they turned to the experts, Lamborghini. The original plan had BMW designing the car, while Lamborghini would handle construction of the chassis and body. Lamborghini had experience with tubular space frames and fiberglass bodies from building their own supercars. The contract seemed perfect. BMW would get Italian supercar expertise, while Lamborghini would get much-needed cash flow. The partnership was announced with great fanfare, and automotive journalists couldn't believe these two rivals were working together. Lamborghini was supposed to build the rolling chassis and ship them to BMW for final assembly. But this marriage between German engineering and Italian passion was doomed from the start. Financial troubles forced BMW to take over production. Just as production was supposed to begin, Lamborghini hit severe financial problems. The company was bleeding money, workers were going on strike, and they could barely build their own cars, let alone BMWs. After months of delays and broken promises, BMW executives flew to Italy to assess the situation. What they found was chaos. Lamborghini had only managed to build a handful of prototypes, and even those had quality issues. BMW made the tough decision to pull the plug on the partnership and bring production in-house. This meant starting almost from scratch, setting up new production lines and re-engineering parts of the car. The delay cost BMW millions and pushed the M1's launch back by nearly 2 years. Ironically, if Lamborghini had been stable enough to build the M1, they might have avoided bankruptcy. Bodies were built by Italdesign, assembled by Bor, then completed by BMW. Even after dumping Lamborghini, BMW still couldn't build the M1 alone. The solution was a complex production chain that sounds insane by today's standards. First, Italdesign in Turin, Italy would manufacture the fiberglass body panels and tubular steel space frame. These components were then shipped to Bauer in Stuttgart, where they assembled the basic Roland chassis. Bauer was a specialist coach builder that had experience with limited production BMWs. After Bauer finished their work, the partially complete cars were trucked to BMW's plant in Munich for final assembly. There, BMW technicians would install the engine, transmission, interior, and electronics. This 3-company, 2-country production process was a logistics nightmare. Each car spent weeks traveling between facilities, and quality control was a constant challenge. If a body panel didn't fit properly, they had to ship it back to Italy for modifications. Giorgetto Giugiaro styled the M1. The man behind the M1's striking looks was Giorgetto Giugiaro, arguably the most influential car designer of the 20th century. Giugiaro had already penned classics like the original Volkswagen Golf, Lotus Esprit, and DeLorean DMC-12. For the M1, he created a design that was both futuristic and timeless. The wedge shape was pure 1970s, but the proportions were perfect. Unlike the extreme wedges from Lamborghini and Ferrari, the M1 was almost practical, with decent visibility and a usable trunk. Giugiaro's genius was in the details: the black louvers on the rear deck, the subtle BMW kidney grills integrated into the front bumper, and those distinctive side vents. The design was so good that BMW barely changed it from concept to production. Even today, the M1 looks modern and purposeful, a testament to Giugiaro's vision. Power came from a 3.5-liter M88 inline-6. While Italian supercars used V12s and flat 12s, BMW stuck with what they knew best: inline-6 engines. The M88 was a masterpiece of engineering, with dual overhead cams, 4 valves per cylinder, and individual throttle bodies. This wasn't just a bored-out sedan engine. It was purpose-built for the M1. The engine block was cast iron for strength, while the head was aluminum to save weight. BMW engineers spent thousands of hours on the dyno, perfecting the cam profiles and valve timing. The M88 used mechanical Kugelfischer fuel injection, the same system found in the legendary 2002 Turbo. This gave instant throttle response but required frequent adjustment. The engine redlined at 6,500 RPM, which doesn't sound high today but was impressive for a large displacement 6 in 1979. Rated at 277 horsepower in street trim. 277 horsepower might not sound like much in today's world of 1,000 horsepower hypercars, but in 1979, this was serious power. The M1 could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 5.6 seconds and hit 162 miles per hour flat out. These numbers put it right in Ferrari and Lamborghini territory. What made the M88 special wasn't just peak power, but how it delivered that power. The torqued curve was broad and flat, pulling strongly from 3,000 RPM to redline. Unlike temperamental Italian engines, the M88 started reliably in any weather and didn't require constant tune-ups. BMW engineers were conservative with the street tune, prioritizing reliability over ultimate power. They knew owners would drive these cars hard, and a blown engine would destroy BMW's reputation. The engine was so under stress that many owners safely added 50 horsepower with simple modifications. Racing versions hit 470 to 490 horsepower, naturally aspirated. When BMW Motorsport got their hands on the M88 for racing, they unleashed its true potential. Group 4 versions made around 470 horsepower just by adding racing cams, higher compression pistons, and slide throttles. Group 5 cars pushed even further, extracting 490 horsepower from the same 3.5 liters. This was achieved through exotic materials and extreme tuning. Titanium connecting rods allowed higher RPM, while forged pistons handled increased compression. The racing engine screamed to 8,000 RPM, a full 1,500 RPM higher than street versions. Individual exhaust headers replaced the street car's conventional manifolds. These naturally aspirated race engines were engineering marvels, making 140 horsepower per liter without forced induction. For comparison, a contemporary Ferrari 308 made about 65 horsepower per liter. The sound of a racing M88 at full throttle was unforgettable, a metallic shriek that could be heard over an entire field of race cars. Turbocharged versions made over 850 horsepower. If 490 horsepower wasn't enough, BMW Motorsport had another trick: turbocharging. Group 5 regulations allowed forced induction with a capacity multiplier, so BMW strapped a massive KKK turbocharger to the M88. The results were mind-blowing. With up to 2 bar of boost pressure, these engines produced over 850 horsepower. This was more power than Formula One engines of the era, crammed into a production-based car. The Turbo M1s were absolute monsters, capable of speeds over 200 miles per hour on the Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans. Drivers described them as barely controllable, with savage power delivery that could break the rear tires loose at 150 miles per hour. The engines were so stressed that they rarely lasted more than one race. BMW mechanics would rebuild them completely between events, replacing pistons, rods, and even cylinder heads. The cost was astronomical, but the performance was worth it. BMW created the ProCar Championship as a one-make series. To showcase the M1 and give it racing credibility, BMW created something unprecedented: the ProCar Championship. This was a support series for Formula One races, where identical M1s would battle before the main event. The genius was getting Formula One drivers to compete during their race weekends. The 5 fastest F1 qualifiers were invited to race in ProCar, joining established touring car and sports car drivers. This meant fans could watch Niki Lauda battle Nelson Piquet in identical BMWs before seeing them in their F1 cars. Each ProCar M1 was identically prepared by BMW Motorsport, making 470 horsepower. The races were short, intense sprints with no pit stops or strategy, just pure driving skill. The series was a massive marketing success, putting the M1 in front of millions of F1 fans worldwide. Niki Lauda won the inaugural championship in 1979. The first ProCar champion was none other than 3-time Formula One world champion Niki Lauda. Fresh off his second F1 title with Ferrari, Lauda dominated the 1979 ProCar season. He won 3 of 8 races and finished on the podium 5 times. What made Lauda's championship special was that he was competing against other F1 stars at the peak of their careers. His main rivals included future world champions Alan Jones and Nelson Piquet, plus touring car legends like Hans-Joachim Stuck. Lauda's methodical driving style was perfect for the M1, which rewarded smoothness over aggression. He later said the ProCar M1 was one of the best handling race cars he'd ever driven. The championship earned Lauda a brand new M1 road car as a prize, which he kept for years before selling it for charity. Nelson Piquet won the 1980 championship. Brazilian Formula One star Nelson Piquet took over where Lauda left off, dominating the 1980 ProCar season. Piquet was in the middle of his breakthrough F1 season with Brabham and used ProCar to sharpen his skills. He won 3 races and beat established sports car drivers at their own game. Piquet's aggressive driving style was completely different from Lauda's calculated approach, proving the M1 could win in different hands. He was famous for spectacular slides and last-lap passes that had crowds on their feet. The 1980 season featured even more F1 talent, including future champions Alain Prost and Keke Rosberg. Piquet's ProCar success helped establish him as a future star, and he'd go on to win 3 F1 World Championships. BMW gave him his prize M1, which he shipped back to Brazil, where it became one of the most famous cars in the country. Only 453 M1s were built between 1978 and 1981. Despite the racing success and critical acclaim, M1 production numbers remained tiny. BMW built just 453 examples over 3 years, barely meeting the homologation requirement. This included all versions: road cars, pro cars, and pure racing machines. The breakdown was approximately 399 road cars and 54 competition variants. Production was painfully slow due to the complex assembly process. BMW was building maybe 3 or 4 cars per week at peak production. Each car required hundreds of man-hours to complete, with extensive hand-fitting of body panels and components. The limited production run makes the M1 one of the rarest BMWs ever made. For comparison, BMW now builds more M3s in a single month than total M1s ever made. Finding one today is incredibly difficult, and prices reflect that rarity. The M1 used dry-sump lubrication. One of the M1's most exotic features was its dry-sump oil system, something you'd never find in a regular BMW. This racing-derived system used a separate oil tank and scavenging pumps to keep oil away from the crankshaft. The benefits were numerous. The engine could sit lower in the chassis, improving center of gravity. Oil starvation during hard cornering was eliminated, crucial for a car designed to race. The system also allowed for better oil cooling and increased oil capacity. The downside was complexity and cost. The dry sump system added dozens of extra components, including pumps, lines, and the external oil tank. Mechanics needed special training just to change the oil properly. This was the only BMW road car ever fitted with dry sump lubrication, before or since. Even modern M cars use conventional wet sump systems. It showed how committed BMW was to making the M1 a true race car for the road. Its 5-speed ZF transaxle was mounted longitudinally at the rear. The M1's drivetrain layout was pure supercar. Instead of a conventional transmission behind the engine, it used a transaxle at the rear axle. This ZF 5-speed unit combined the gearbox and differential in one housing. The engine connected to the transaxle via a rigid torque tube, creating a stressed chassis member. This layout provided near-perfect weight distribution and reduced rotational inertia. The longitudinal mounting was unusual. Most mid-engine cars mount transaxles transversely, but BMW wanted the weight as far back as possible for stability. The ZF box was incredibly strong, handling the M88's torque without complaint. Gear changes were mechanical and precise, with a classic metal gate shifter. The transaxle design meant the M1 had no traditional drive shaft, reducing weight and mechanical losses. This same basic layout would later appear in cars like the Porsche 928 and Chevrolet Corvette. The suspension used unequal-length double wishbones at all four corners. BMW threw out their traditional suspension designs for the M1, instead using racing-style double wishbones all around. This was the first BMW road car with this sophisticated setup. Each corner had unequal-length upper and lower control arms, allowing precise control over camber and toe changes. The geometry was developed through thousands of hours of track testing. Springs and dampers were adjustable, letting owners tune the car for road or track use. Anti-roll bars front and rear controlled body motion without compromising ride quality. The suspension was so well designed that racing versions needed only minor modifications. BMW engineers spent months perfecting the bushing durometers to balance handling and comfort. The result was a car that could lap the Nürburgring at racing speeds, yet still be driven to dinner. This suspension design influenced every future BMW M car, establishing principles still used today. Pop-up headlights gave it a clean, aerodynamic profile. The M1's pop-up headlights weren't just for style, they were essential for aerodynamics. With the lights retracted, the nose was completely smooth, reducing drag significantly. This was crucial for reaching the 162 miles per hour top speed. The headlight mechanism was electrically operated and surprisingly reliable for the era. Each headlight pod contained H4 halogen bulbs that provided decent illumination when raised. The lights could be flashed with a stalk control without fully deploying them. When raised, the headlights increased frontal area by nearly 10%, dropping top speed by several miles per hour. The clean nose also helped with cooling airflow to the front-mounted radiators. Many owners loved the dramatic effect of the lights rising from the hood. The pop-up design was very much of its era. By the 1990s, pedestrian safety regulations would kill such designs forever. BMW dealers struggled to sell them new. Despite its racing pedigree and supercar performance, the M1 was a tough sell at BMW dealerships. The biggest problem was price. In the U.S. gray market, M1s cost around $115,000. That was Ferrari and Lamborghini money, and those buyers weren't shopping at BMW stores. Most BMW dealers in 1979 were selling 3 Series and 5 Series sedans to doctors and lawyers. Their sales staff had no idea how to position a mid-engine supercar. Many dealers didn't even want M1s on their lots, fearing they'd sit unsold for months. Some M1s spent over a year at dealerships before finding buyers. The car required special tools and training to service, which many dealers didn't want to invest in. Marketing was also a challenge. BMW's image was built on practical luxury, not exotic supercars. The slow sales contributed to BMW's decision to end production after just 3 years. It remains the only BMW built in cooperation with Lamborghini and Idle Design. The M1 stands alone in BMW history as their only collaboration with Lamborghini and Ital Design. This three-way partnership was unprecedented and remains unrepeated. No other BMW before or since has involved Lamborghini in any capacity. The Italian influence is obvious in the M1's design and construction. The fiberglass body and tubular frame were pure Lamborghini techniques. Idle Design's involvement went beyond just styling. They were integral to the car's development. This collaboration created a unique blend of German engineering and Italian flair. BMW learned valuable lessons about supercar construction that influenced future projects. But they also learned the challenges of international partnerships and complex supply chains. Today, BMW does everything in-house or with established German suppliers. The M1 remains a fascinating reminder of when BMW stepped outside their comfort zone. The M1's wedge profile inspired later BMW concepts. Though BMW never built another mid-engine supercar, the M1's design influence lived on. The sharp wedge profile and angular surfaces appeared in numerous BMW concept cars. The 1991 BMW Nazca C2 concept shared obvious design DNA with the M1. The 2008 M1 Homage concept was a direct tribute, updating the wedge shape for modern times. Even production BMWs borrowed elements. The Z1's doors and the 8 Series profile showed M1 influence. The M1 proved BMW could build something radical and futuristic, not just conservative sedans. It gave BMW designers permission to think beyond traditional forms. The car's proportions, long hood, short deck, aggressive stance, became BMW performance car signatures. Many current BMW design elements can trace their roots back to this groundbreaking supercar. The M1 showed that BMW design could be both beautiful and purposeful. Its steering wheel and switchgear were shared with humble 5 Series models. Open the M1's door, and you'd find a shocking mix of supercar and parts bin. The steering wheel was straight out of a 5 Series sedan, complete with BMW roundel. Turn signal stalks, window switches, and even the ignition switch were borrowed from lesser BMWs. This part sharing was partly cost-saving but also about reliability. BMW knew their standard components were proven over millions of miles. Using exotic bespoke switches might look cool but could leave owners stranded. The instrument cluster was unique to the M1, with a 300 km/h speedometer and 8,000 RPM tachometer. But the heating controls were pure 5 Series, right down to the same plastic knobs. This mundane switchgear in an exotic wrapper was typically BMW, function over form. Many owners actually appreciated the familiar controls and easy parts availability. It was a practical approach to supercar building that only the Germans would attempt. Today, the M1 is one of BMW's rarest and most collectible cars. The M1 has transformed from slow-selling oddity to 7-figure collectible. Values have skyrocketed in recent years as collectors recognize its significance. Clean examples now trade for over $500,000, with exceptional cars approaching $1 million. ProCar versions are even more valuable, especially those with racing history. The combination of rarity, racing pedigree, and historical importance makes the M1 irresistible to collectors. It's the genesis of BMW's M division, their only mid-engine car, and a legitimate supercar. Many M1s live in climate-controlled collections, driven only to shows and vintage racing events. Finding one for sale is increasingly difficult. Owners know what they have and rarely let go. The M1 market is truly global, with cars trading between Europe, America, and Asia. BMW's own classic department has bought back several examples for their collection. As the only BMW supercar ever made, the M1's collectability seems assured forever. That's all for today, folks. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button so you don't miss the next one. See you there.